The Witch and the Definitely Dead Detective by Sadie Brent, Chapter 10. Friends, Foes, and Phantom Conversations. The late morning sun cast warm, dappled light over the bustling streets of Stony Fork as Evie made her way to Red's diner, following Marcellus's directions. The aroma of sizzling bacon and freshly brewed coffee greeted her before she even reached the door. Red's was a quintessential small-town diner with glossy red booths, a jukebox humming softly in the corner, and a chalkboard menu scrawled with the day's specials: chicken fried steak, meatloaf, and sweet potato pie. Marcellus was already seated at a booth near the window, sipping what looked like an iced tea. He waved her over with a warm smile. "Perfect timing," he said as she slid into the booth opposite him. "I took the liberty of ordering you their famous iced vanilla latte. Trust me, it's life-changing." As Evie settled in, she took a moment to absorb the vibrant scene around her. A waitress with a beehive hairdo bustled between tables, balancing trays of pancakes and syrup-laden waffles. A group of older men sat at the counter, swapping stories and chuckling over their coffee. The hum of conversation was punctuated by the clatter of silverware and the occasional ding of the kitchen bell. "This place is adorable," Evie said, taking a grateful sip of her latte. He hadn't been kidding. It was the perfect blend of sweet and strong. Marcellus chuckled. "Red's has been around forever. Everyone in town swears by their sweet potato fries, and their burgers? Legendary." They perused their menus and placed orders. Marcellus went for the chicken fried steak, and Evie opted for a BLT with a side of the famous fries. "So how are you settling in?" he asked as the waitress, Maggie, refilled his tea. Evie hesitated before answering. "Honestly, it's a lot. The shop, the house, this whole inheritance thing. But it's starting to feel a little less overwhelming. I'm actually really excited about the grand reopening." Marcellus nodded, a twinkle of approval in his eyes. "That's great to hear. Stony Fork may seem quiet, but it has its charms. You've only scratched the surface. There's a steakhouse on the other side of town that does incredible sushi and sashimi. And oh, you'd love Granny. She runs the quiltery, makes quilts, teaches workshops. She's a bit of a town icon." "That sounds amazing. I'll have to stop by and see her," Evie said, making a mental note. "And if you're in the mood for something different, we've got a pretty good Mexican place a couple of streets over," Marcellus added. Just then, the diner door jingled open, and in walked a strikingly tall woman with a cascade of red braids pulled into a loose bun. She was dressed in high-waisted jeans, a vibrant purple blouse, and a confidence that seemed to brighten the room. "Speak of the devil," Marcellus said with a grin. "Evie, meet Allison Merritt, owner of Beauty and the Braid." Al spotted Marcellus and strode over to the booth. "Well, look at you, Marcellus. I haven't seen you in here since the last town council meeting. What's the occasion?" "I'm introducing Evie here to Stony Fork's finest," he said, gesturing toward Evie. "Evie, meet Al. Al, this is Lizzie's great-niece." Al's face lit up as she extended a hand. "So you're the mystery girl everyone's been buzzing about. Welcome to Stony Fork." Evie shook her hand, immediately liking her warm energy. "Thanks. It's been a whirlwind, but I'm glad to be here." Al leaned against the booth, her curiosity getting the better of her. "So, you're reopening Silver Sage Naturals? That's big news. Let me know if you need help. I'm great at staging and decor. Plus, my salon is next door." "If you ever need a coffee run or a sounding board, I'm your girl." "That's so sweet of you to offer," Evie said sincerely. "I might just take you up on that." After a few more minutes of friendly chatter, Al excused herself to grab her to-go order, promising to stop by the shop soon. As Evie walked back to the shop, her mind swirled with everything Marcellus had shared. The grand reopening felt daunting, but it was starting to feel real. She paused briefly to admire the flowers blooming along the shop's sidewalk planters, noting how the cheerful pops of lavender and marigold offset the shop's sage-green facade. As she bent to pull a stray weed, she caught snippets of a hushed conversation from two women passing by. "I heard Mabel and Lizzie had it out just before she died," one woman whispered. "Really? What about?" the other replied, her voice tinged with intrigue. Evie froze, pretending to adjust the flowers as they passed. "Not sure," the first woman said, "but Mabel's always had her claws out when it came to Lizzie. Something about competition." Their voices trailed off as they rounded the corner. Evie frowned, filing the tidbit away for later. She didn't know much about Mabel, but the idea of someone arguing with Lizzie just before her death gave her a strange, uneasy feeling. Back inside the shop, Evie set to work tidying the shelves and taking inventory. She ran her fingers over jars of dried herbs and lotions, catching the earthy scent of lavender, chamomile, and sage. Each product seemed handcrafted with love, from the hand-lettered labels to the whimsical designs etched into the glass. Spinks perched on the counter, his ears twitching at something invisible. "Are you playing with our mysterious guest again?" Evie teased, watching as his tail flicked and he pawed at thin air. She chuckled softly. "You know you could show yourself," she said to the seemingly empty shop. "I don't bite, I promise. But I get it. If I were a ghost, I'd probably be shy too." As she worked, she continued the one-sided conversation. "I wish I'd had the chance to know Lizzie better. My mom never talked about her much. And Dad?" Her voice faltered. "Well, he died when I was a baby, so it was just me and Mom growing up. She never would have wanted me to come here, you know. I guess she had her reasons for keeping her distance from Lizzie." The shop was silent, save for the faint sound of Spink's purring. But Evie felt a strange sense of companionship, as if the room were listening. Later in the afternoon, Evie found herself drawn back upstairs to Lizzie's cozy little apartment above the shop. The space seemed frozen in time, a perfect snapshot of Lizzie's personality. The eclectic bohemian style was evident in every corner, from the colorful patchwork quilt draped over the love seat to the beaded curtain hanging in the doorway leading to a tiny kitchenette. A shelf by the window brimmed with books on herbalism, nature, and energy work, interspersed with small potted plants, their green leaves stretching toward the sunlight. As Evie wandered, she caught sight of a framed photo sitting on the windowsill. It was Lizzie, beaming with pride, a fishing pole in hand, standing on what looked like a river dock. A string of trout dangled from the other hand. Her wild gray hair was barely contained under a wide-brimmed hat, and her eyes sparkled with an adventurous spirit. "You were something else, weren't you?" Evie murmured, brushing her fingers over the edge of the frame. She felt a pang of regret that she'd never had the chance to know this vibrant woman who had been so deeply woven into Stony Fork's fabric. Her cell phone buzzed in her pocket, jolting her from her thoughts. She glanced at the screen. Marcellus. "Hey, Marcellus," she answered, stepping away from the window to sit on the love seat. "Hi, Evie. Sorry to bother you. I just realized I completely forgot to mention something at lunch earlier," Marcellus said, his voice warm and apologetic. "You asked about that roll-top desk upstairs, right?" "Yes," Evie perked up. "It's beautiful, but it's locked, and I can't find a key anywhere. I even checked all the usual spots, drawers, jars, under rugs. Nothing." Marcellus chuckled. "Lizzie was always good at hiding things, so it doesn't surprise me. But I'll check tomorrow when I'm back at the office. I might have a spare key in her files. If I can't find one, I'll give Brody a call. He's the best locksmith in town, and I'm sure he'd be happy to help." "Thanks, I really appreciate it," Evie said, feeling a spark of curiosity reignite. "I can't help but wonder what's inside. It just seems so intentional, you know? Like whatever's in there is important." "Knowing Lizzie, it probably is," Marcellus replied. There was a brief pause before he added, "That desk is older than me, by the way. She used to joke that it held all the secrets of Stony Fork, but who knows, it could just be full of old fishing licenses and tax records." Evie laughed. "Well, now I really want to open it." "Hopefully we'll get that sorted tomorrow," Marcellus said. "In the meantime, don't let it drive you too crazy." After they hung up, Evie wandered back toward the desk, its polished surface glowing in the late afternoon light. She ran her fingers over the carved wood details and admired the craftsmanship. It truly was a magnificent piece of furniture, and there was no doubt in her mind that Lizzie had kept something meaningful inside. As she turned to leave the apartment, she paused by the bookshelf. A thin, leather-bound journal caught her eye, its spine decorated with tiny gold stars. She pulled it free, the scent of aged paper wafting up as she opened it. The pages were filled with handwritten notes in a delicate script, recipes for herbal balms, lists of plants, and little snippets of observations about Stony Fork's flora and fauna. Evie smiled to herself. You really were a force of nature, weren't you, Lizzie? Tucking the journal back into place, she headed downstairs to the shop. Spinks greeted her with a playful meow, batting at the hem of her shirt. She scooped him up, stroking his silky fur as she murmured, "What do you think, Spinks? Think we'll find the key? Or is it just another one of Lizzie's secrets?" The cat purred loudly in her arms, then suddenly jumped down and scampered off, his tail flicking excitedly as if chasing something unseen. Evie chuckled, watching him dart around the shop. "Still playing with our invisible friend, huh?" She busied herself with inventory, the scents of dried lavender and eucalyptus filling the air as she carefully inspected jars and tins. Every now and then she glanced toward the ceiling, where the apartment and the locked desk waited above her. "Don't worry," she said aloud to the empty shop. "We'll figure it out. I just wish you could tell me where the key is, or better yet, what's inside." The room remained silent, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something was listening.